For now?
Yeah.
We're live?
Yeah.
All right.
All right.
Hey, everybody. Hope you're having a fine Friday. You know we are. I'm Brand BTC. I've got a co-host with me this week, maybe forever.
Who
Pete.
knows? Hey, I'm Peter Chihuaga. I work here in the Bitcoin Magazine office. Maybe potential permanent co-host. Either way, definitely excited to be in today's tuber-heavy episode.
Okay, you stole the freaking joke. All right. Well, Pete, I'm less excited to have you, but I'm still excited to have you on. Peter is the amorphous voice behind Bitcoin Magazine. When you read it, you're reading Peter many times. So lucky to have you on the show. We got an excellent week that's happened. I mean, crazy stuff has happened. It's been wild. And let's recap it.
Let's do it. That's why we're here, right?
That's why we're here. So to kick things off, the big news, probably the biggest news out of the week, was MicroStrategy announcing that they were investing, or they had bought 21,454 Bitcoins.
So it's 0.1% of the total supply. And I don't know, from my perspective, like as a maximalist, that's an even bigger kind of eye-opener than, 21,000 Bitcoin, it cost them $250 million. That's a quarter of their total worth as a company. Those are all eye-opening. But when I at night think hard about it, the number that really catches me is just that such a big proportion of the total ever supply. And I get most interested, excited, or just kind of like intrigued at that point, because imagine if Microsoft wanted to make a similar play, or a government, how much of Bitcoin they could theoretically scoop up and I was about to say, and then they control the funds certainly, but I don't want to insinuate that owning Bitcoin as a government would let you control a network, because I don't think that's true.
Yeah,
but that was crazy.
It's not proof of stake, but
yeah.
This is crazy. I mean, you're right. 0.1% of all Bitcoins is ridiculous. I mean, you can only do that 100 times or something,
right,
and 1,000 times, and that's it. And then
right,
you got all of it. And I'm not giving up my Bitcoin, so it's like that's even less than they can possibly own. So yeah, I mean, moves like this are incredibly wild.
Don't happen very much. I don't know where the precedent is on something like this.
The Winklevi, right?
Yeah.
They said they own 1% of all Bitcoins. So, they're not even at the Winklevi status yet.
Who is?
Yeah, dude. Oh, in talking about that.
Do we need to dive into what the Winklevi are doing?
Yeah, let's take a little detour, because if you guys didn't see what the Winklevi did this week with El Jefe, Stool Presidente, then you guys missed out on some wild stuff.
So actually, this might be a helpful exercise for anyone who is not totally caught up on this, because I have a very vague understanding. But Dave Portnoy, who's the guy in charge of Barstool Sports, which is a sports/bro media property. He does some day trading these days in quarantine. He's done some episodes about Bitcoin, and he just kind of said live, I don't understand Bitcoin. I think people know the Winklevi from the Facebook movie and that they're involved in Bitcoin. So he kind of invited them onto his show, and it looks like they appeared, but I didn't see the episode or anything. How did it go? Yeah,
so they appeared. They rang the doorbell. He opened. Is the Winklevi. There's a crazy part in the video where he says, "Say hi to the camera guy," and they both said hi at the exact same time.
Well, that's twin. That's just some kind of wavelength.
It was the telepathy going on, so you could tell it was actually the Winklevi. It wasn't some stand-in. But yeah, so they basically walked him through. Okay, I don't want to criticize the Winklevi, but they gave him pretty much the most ridiculous reason to buy Bitcoin, which is that they said that Elon's going to asteroid mine gold and bring that to Earth and make gold not scarce.
No, I'm with that. At a certain point, the why Bitcoin narrative is so hard to answer that legitimately might be you gotta so you're to hedge against governments. Well, because we're going to the moon, we're going to populate Mars, and on some level, it's just skip all the intermediary steps and go straight to Elon Musk.
That's basically what they did. Yeah. You can tell they were at that phase of thinking about it, and they're all right, let's just start here. And it's we didn't even talk about Bitcoin as a store of value or anything like that. It's go straight to Mars, go straight to Elon.
I respect that they're just trying to get him deep into it right off the bat.
Yeah, yeah. But hey, more power to them. It was
Yeah.
really entertaining. If
That's
you haven't
cool.
checked it out, you should definitely watch the video. But yeah, I mean, okay, that was interesting. Let's
Yes.
move on to the next story,
Okay.
which is one that actually you helped, kind of craft the narrative around, which is this payment pools with Taproot.
Yeah, so I wouldn't say I helped craft the narrative around this, but I had the pleasure of copy editing and publishing Aaron Von Werdum's article about this on BitcoinMagazine.com. So I would super encourage anyone who's interested in this story to go to our homepage and read that story because it's super well done. Anyone who's interested in the MicroStrategy story, I'd also say you should sign up for our Weekly Bits newsletter because we covered that in there as well. Gotta get that plug in there. But yeah, so Taproot's probably the closest next protocol upgrade to happen. A lot of viewers have probably heard about Taproot. And it's so close to happening that a lot of influential devs are even discussing some of the things that it might enable. And payment pools, which is what this article is about, is a proposal. It's pretty far off. It's just an idea really at this point. It might not even be called payment pools depending on who you're talking to.
Well, the different devs have different names for their version of payment pools, right?
Yeah. Exactly. But payment pools is kind of the parlance we're going with at Bitcoin Magazine for this article, but TBD. But if Taproot, which is not much, I think it's going to be enabled sooner or later. When it comes to fruition, it would enable this idea of a payment pool that would let Bitcoin users kind of pool together on transactions and put their coins together. Then any of them could make a transaction from that pool, and blockchain analysts theoretically would not be able to tell which one of them made that specific transaction. So it's just kind of another obfuscation privacy layer on top of Bitcoin. That sounds pretty cool. Most of the examples that Aaron shared involved were the kind of Alice and Bob thing, super simple, but it could grow into pools with so many users doing so many transactions that we're really kind of hiding from blockchain analysts. So it's pretty technical, pretty theoretical still at this point, but could have huge implementations. I think Aaron, who's super neutral, very good reporter, very scientific in his articles. My sense is he'd be pretty excited about this as privacy tech, and when he gets excited about privacy tech, I know it's legit. So
yeah, I mean, we have all these privacy options that are sort of budding right now in Bitcoin. This is another one. It has drawbacks from what I was reading, from what I can tell, in that it almost functions now. Don't cut my head off if you're a dev listening to this, but it almost functions kind of like a one of three multi-sig wallet, in that if you do have Bitcoin in it, all three people in the Taproot wallet, or however many people are in it, have to sign off on the transaction in order for it to happen. So there's some drawbacks with it. You can kind of preload some of the transactions so that it makes it easier and you don't need everyone's signing off on them. But there are things to work around. There's no UI or UX for this. It doesn't even exist yet, but it'll be a nascent thing that'll grow, and we'll see how it grows. But it's a cool privacy tech play, and Taproot enables a lot of stuff. This is just one thing, so very excited.
Yeah, I'd put it in the pile of cool things to watch in Bitcoin, which is a big pile. But that being said, what I'm big on with this is every time that blockchain analysts make some progress in the technology and their ability to track transactions, every time Coinbase makes some kind of deal with the government, a new cool protocol is being discussed. And it makes me encourage that, Bitcoin, which is pseudonymous, not private in nature, the devs will always come up with ways to, keep transactions as private as possible and kind of keep the ethos of the technology alive. So it's just another great example of that.
Totally. And it's the arms race, which brings us to our next story.
Nice transition, Brandon.
Oh,
yes.
You like that? Which is that there's been a little bit of an attack going on with our onion routing friends at Tor. The idea behind it is basically that they're degrading these SSL certificates of the websites that people are going to by adding servers onto the Tor system. And by doing that, they basically are able to sub in their own wallet addresses for these coin join addresses that people are trying to join. And so basically people are going to an area where they can coin join or they can coin swap or, like some of these whirlpool type deals where you obfuscate identity and privacy. Like, it's one of these tools. But they figured out a way that they can kind of insert themselves in the middle of the interface that you're interacting with to do these. And instead of you sending Bitcoin to the pool, they throw their Bitcoin address in there and you send it to them instead and it's gone. It's a really brilliant attack, but it's really what it is it's a liability kind of, technical glitch with Tor, right?
Right. So my understanding from the security kind of researcher who published that this is a thing that's happening out on Medium, he's saying there is no inherent fix, no steps that a Tor user who's mixing Bitcoin can take other than to stop doing that, and that it's like a fundamental issue that Tor would have to address for that to get fixed. And there's no reason to think these attacks are going to stop just because they've been identified.
Yeah. And if you want to check out the Medium article, the guy's name who wrote it was, Nusenu?
Yeah.
Nusenu.
Never had heard of him before.
Yeah,
I don't know what that means, but if you Google him, I'm sure you'd be able to find it.
Yes, you should be able to. So that kind of covers that story. I wish we could go into more details, but I'm not a tech guy. Like, I don't have a development background. I wouldn't be able to dig into this and learn more. I'm just reading about it. So that's about the amount of insight that we can give. I will say, before we go to the next subject, this has been a very privacy-heavy day.
It has been.
One note that also just happened recently is last night Trump came out and said that he's been listening to people who would really like Ed Snowden to come back to the United States.
Huge news.
Yeah. I mean, so...
What's his... yeah, you go ahead, but...
Well, we're biased, right? We're biased.
Yeah.
We had Ed Snowden at Bitcoin 2019. If you didn't see it, go ahead and check out the YouTube. It's freaking awesome. He's a brilliant guy. I think he's an American hero. To hear a sitting president talk about maybe thinking about bringing him back to the United States without prosecution, holy cow.
So I don't want to look a gift horse in the mouth. I think it'd be awesome. I believe also that Edward Snowden should be free to come back to this country. But then with, politicians in general and Trump specifically, I wonder what is the political gain here? Why do you think Trump came out and said this yesterday?
Oh, do you want to speculate?
And let's wildly speculate because that's I think what we do best.
Yeah, it's what I do best for sure. I think Trump said it probably as a ploy because he knows that there is a base of voters. He's trying to get re-election right now. There's a base of voters who feel very strongly about Snowden being a whistleblower and a hero and deserving to come home. And I think that he knew that he could play up to that base. I didn't see the context of whether this question was posed to him or how it was brought up, but it definitely seems like a very savvy thing to be throwing your weight around. And he's doing a lot of these things, right? He also said he'd re-elect me and I'll reduce capital gains tax. It's like he's targeting us right now.
Is he targeting the Bitcoin base, you think?
Without saying anything about Bitcoin. Maybe he doesn't realize he's targeting the Bitcoin base, but this is just music to our ears.
So full circle maybe, or I don't know, at best probably 60% circle. Didn't Dave Portnoy recently interview Donald Trump?
He did.
So I'm just saying maybe there is some sort of Bitcoin kind of common thread going on through all this stuff.
Dave Portnoy actually taught Donald Trump about Bitcoin.
Yes.
And then is using it as a cover to pretend like he didn't know about it in order to remove his tracks from Trump.
I think that makes sense.
Yeah. You heard it here first.
So, between Tor, Taproot, and this other big story that I know you're passionate about out there, I do feel like there's another common thread going through our stories. And so I wanted to ask you about this crypto asset called Yams. Can you walk me through this and why a Bitcoiner such as myself, a maximalist hodler, should even think about Yams for 3 seconds?
Yeah, so first of all, that common thread is that it's tuber day, right? We got yams, we got taproots, and we got onions, all right? It's great. That was my joke that Peter sort of set me up for, but kind of stole the thunder for. But I digress. Anyway, Yams. Here's why I, as a Bitcoiner, find Yams interesting enough to talk about on this show.
And please start by explaining to me beyond the vegetable, what are Yams?
Yeah, so Yam is this DeFi product. It's run on Ethereum. It doesn't have to be run on Ethereum. It can be run anywhere. But this is an experiment, right? It's basically, on the one hand, it's a DAO in that users who own the Yams have voting power over a treasury that the treasury can then, provide dividends.
Is there a fixed supply of Yams?
There's not a fixed supply of Yams. We'll get into that in a second.
Okay, sorry.
So we I'm trying to condense this in like a 1 minute spiel, but there's so much to unpack here. But so basically, these Yams vote on a treasury. They can give themselves dividends. They can invest in stuff with the treasury. They can do whatever they want with the treasury. It's up to them. In order to get the Yams, you had to take these other shitcoins and stake them on a website, or stake them on Ethereum, basically through a website. And then you would receive an equivalent amount of Yams as like how much you staked, right? So it's like they have a very interesting, inventive distribution process for the Yams. They have a very interesting DAO by which you can use the Yams. And then they also have this middle part, which is this supply adjusting mechanism within the Yam token protocol, where basically they're trying to tie a Yam to $1, which also the DAO can decide how much they want to tie the Yam to.
Is this what Yam farming is?
Yeah, kind of. The Yam farming is how you get the Yams. It's that distribution model.
Okay.
But so basically they have this thing called a rebase, which just prints or contracts the supply of Yams and equally distributes it into everyone's pocket, everyone's wallet, in order to try and approximate this dollar value of the Yam. It was funny to watch this thing spectacularly fail. And that's really what we should be talking about, because this thing did fail spectacularly. Not forever, but implementation 1 had a bug in the rebasing.
Whoops.
Yeah, oops. They even announced, they said, this thing hasn't been audited. This thing is totally a security loophole.
It's called Yams.
It's called Yams. This is a big joke. And then they had $150 million staked into it within 24 hours. So, clearly
bullish,
the
though.
risk tolerance is out the window at this point. But so what's interesting is that this thing failed because there was a bug in the rebase, and now they're printing out of control the number of Yams. It's all going into their treasury that everyone can vote on. But because it's Yams in the treasury, then no one can actually vote on the treasury because everyone is voting with Yams, and the treasury has thousands of times more Yams than anyone else does. And so it's they totally destroyed themselves because they were testing as a live product, trying to figure out what they did wrong. So, a lot of lessons to be learned.
Tie this to Bitcoin for me. Bitcoin sound money, Yams are...
I don't even know how to describe a Yam at this point. It's just, it's ridiculous. But, what's interesting is that, Bitcoin is this well-tested 11, 12-year-old thing that when you want to compare that to something like a Yam is, Yam rhymes with scam. Scam, Yam. It's this crazy experiment. I don't want to degrade it because it was a cool attempt, but the lesson learned is don't launch a product without having any sort of testing for it. Don't just Frankenstein a bunch of different projects together into one. Tron. And just, if you focus on Bitcoin, you'll never have to worry about these kind of scams because you won't lose your money in them. So
that being said, I respect the attempt. Experimentation is important. And so, no hate to the, if as long as Yam was transparent, I suppose I'm not upset about it.
And they were. That's the thing. They were transparent. They, for whatever it's worth, they tried to make this thing succeed. They just failed in a spectacularly hilarious fashion. And so, this sort of project could be attempted again on Bitcoin. It's the tooling is there for Bitcoin, especially with layered scaling and everything that we're doing, that this could happen on Bitcoin. And if it does, this idea of a DAO, this idea of a fair distribution model, this idea of, trying to keep some sort of metastable value to this layer of value on top of Bitcoin, all of those things are interesting. in and of themselves. So I wouldn't write off Yams as just like let's ignore it, because there's a kernel of interesting experimentation here.
It kind of shows just how crazy crypto blockchain can be, DeFi, and so like these things are always going to pop up. I think it's funny.
Yeah.
To try and tie it together, maybe at least for me a little bit. I'm happy that Dave Portnoy, MicroStrategy, maybe Donald Trump are focused on Bitcoin and adopting that, and that the Yams can be for maybe
the ridiculous,
more fringe,
degenerate, people in
Let's
this.
Bitcoin first, Yams like later.
Way down, way after asteroid mining list for sure.
Yeah.
All right, well, guys, that's our show. I hope you guys have a wonderful weekend. I know we're gonna have a wonderful weekend.
I'm psyched.
It's beautiful weather here, so take care, stack some sats, and enjoy